friend of mine, when we were about 15, said, will you come somewhere one this afternoon? Will you wax school with it? I said, yeah, of course. Well, where are you going? He said, I've got to go to Army Careers Office. I said, what for? He said, well, I have to take a test because I'm thinking of joining. It's quite interesting that we talk about this. We talk about women in finance. And I'm a great supporter, and we'll talk about it, that, you know, anybody who's good at what they do in specialist finance should have the same opportunities as anybody else. Back then, I'd done 3 months in that job as an estate agent in a business with 7 other female colleagues. The manager got up and left one day, and then the area manager came over and sat us all in a room and said, well, Stephen's the only man, so he will now be the manager. So he said, have you made your mind up? And it was about 11 o'clock, and I said, no. He said, make it up by 5 o'clock, or I'll make it up for you. One of my best ever lines. I thought, that's a great line, you know?
Welcome to the Property Funder podcast. I'm here today with Stephen Burns. If you've been living under a rock and you're in the you're not in the specialist finance industry, you might not know who Stephen is. And so, for your benefit, this is copy that's been given to me. Stephen is a well-known and well-respected broker within the specialist property finance space. With over a decade of experience, a partner at Word on the Street. He's helped to facilitate close to £2 billion in real estate transactions. A decorated military veteran, Stephen started his civilian career as an estate agent in the late 1980s, where he built a successful Greater Manchester firm, which he later sold as a going concern. Following this first successful stint into the property world, Stephen stepped over the line into specialist lending as a bridging broker. He's extremely passionate about the industry and believes that relationships are key to success, alongside hard work, of course. And if you ask him, there's no one busier, that's for sure. Anyway, that's the official version, Steve.
Yeah.
Or Steve, or however you like to be addressed.
However.
But it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
We've known each other for about as long as I've been in the specialist finance industry, which is now over 9 years.
Yeah.
You were at the time until very recently with Adapt, and now you're. We have in the room with us here, although out of shot, Michael Street, who your colleague and business partner. So delighted to have him here as well. But so Steve, what's the best place for us to start? I mean, you talk a lot, very passionately, about your time in the military. You're wearing your poppy. We are, the effectively Remembrance Weekend, or the Friday before it. How did you end up in the armed forces? And and let's talk maybe a little bit about your experiences there.
It's a typical Burnsy story, really. I was a bit thick at school, to be fair, and we were a very poor background, so school was something we went to when we could, and that might sound a bit crazy, but people often say, why don't you follow sport, or why you're not good at sport? Well, we couldn't afford a PE kit, so I used to stay off school when it was physical education. So it was just one of those lives, sadly. And I tried and tried, but you miss lessons and you get by. And a friend of mine, when we were about 15, said, will you come somewhere one this afternoon? Will you wax school with it? I said, yeah, of course. Well, where are you going? He said, I've got to go to Army Careers Office. I said, what for? He said, well, I have to take a test because I'm thinking of joining. They're a big strapping lad, obviously, like myself. And anyway, cut a long story short, we went to the Army Careers Office. And when I was there, he said, they're like they're bullies, aren't they? So he said, come on then. And we both sat the test. I passed, he failed, and I went in. And that's essentially a true story. My mum packed the best case she could for me. And I was 16 on the 1st of July, and I joined on the 14th of September. So I was a pretty young boy. And I was a young 16-year-old, effectively. And, I got on the train, all paid for by the army, and we went to Folkestone. So I couldn't have gone any further, I think I cried all the way down.
No.
Yeah, I think so. I think I was scared. I was on my own. Everybody else that you could see on the train that were going were big and beefy. And there was me, this little scrawny ginger fella. And we got to the train station, there was a minibus and we were ushered on it, and we went to, it was a talk about anecdotes. We ended up at the camp and there was, typical barriers and guards with machine guns and everything like that. And this big ass sergeant just said, take your card out of your pocket, because we're all given a card. And mine said Salamanca Company. So he said, walk up, and all it was were football and rugby fields all on one side and barracks on the other. He said, walk up until you see a flag with your company on, and wait there and don't move. So there's I think 600 joined on that day, 600 boys. And so we're all walking up, and there's Arnhem Company and Queen's Division, and there's strapping lads behind each and every row. And I'm walking, I couldn't find my Salamanca. It was quite hard to pronounce. Anyway, and then I saw in the distance, there was this flag sort of leaned over a bit scruffy with nobody stood behind it. And when I got up to it, it said Salamanca Company, and that was me. So I sort of stood there on my own and thought, I've joined the thickos lot here. And anyway, and that was that. And literally just loved it from the very first day. Issue you into a barracks with a room full of 10 lads you've never met, and come in, shout at you, teach you how to iron your clothes, and they take it easy on you for a week, and then you just start training. And I took to it, and I loved it. Yeah, as a junior, because we weren't old enough to go to war. The Falklands War was on when I joined in 1982, so we were support services. So we'd pack things and send things over to them and stuff like that. And you do a year's training. Where when you're an adult and you join at over 18, you do 16 weeks. So effectively, it was called the Infantry Junior Leaders Battalion. We were the future leaders of the army. And so literally 52 weeks training when somebody else is doing 16. When you've done it, you're pretty good at it. And that was it. 12 months goes by, and you get a choice then. Where do you want to serve in the world? And you go in and you have 6 choices. And I'd wrote all my 6 choices down, and you march in and speak to the commanding officer. And he said, thanks for your choices, Stephen. He said, but there's no places in any of them 6. What can I do? I don't want to go home, because I was in the army now. And he said, well, you can go in the infantry. I said, well, what's that? And he said, just read that. And there was a paragraph in a book, and it said, travel the world. So I said, all right. And I signed it, and then I was shipped off to Berlin. And that was my first posting as a 17-year-old, 2 years in Berlin, guarding Rudolf Hess, who was... was in Spandau prison. Yeah, that was. When you go to Berlin, you are standby for major war. So when any armed force unit is in Germany, it's just the pivotal place where if there's a war, that's where you go from. So most of the infantry and backup battalions are stationed in Germany. Berlin was a fantastic posting.
Is that still the case?
Possibly, but the army's gone so much smaller in its overall size, I would think, and technology and flight times and different aircraft can get you to places quicker.
Yeah.
So I'd probably say, even though I said, I don't know, but it was certainly there's a term for it, but it was certainly the holding base or location.
And what was it like being in Berlin in the early 80s? Kind of, it was because the Cold War sort of, around, that sort of early 80s, Reagan, the rhetoric was, got a bit hotter, shall we say, around that time. Was that something you were conscious of, or?
I think no, I wasn't a well-educated boy, and you're still a boy. You're just drinking 15 pints of lager at 17 years old, and nightclub didn't shut till 7 the next morning. But I think interestingly, because my first son was born the day the Berlin Wall came down. Anyway, years later, but. We look at the modern world now, and then in Berlin, it was segregated. So you had an English sector, German sector, American, French, and Hispanic. So you had literally 5 sectors. So we'd go out at night. Yeah. So basically, how was that? The sectors were that was where those communities lived.
Right, okay.
So if we wanted to go and listen to Gloria Estefan, we'd go to the Hispanic, and then literally you go to Germany to listen to hard rock.
Right.
It was very much like that. And then there was a wall, and there was an east and a west. And we would, act as armed guard. And to get to the other side of the west, you would go west through the east and to the west. So we would act as armed guard for that section of East. And you could stop for lunch. And whereas, say, we'd get a meal for £20, or it was marks in those days, you could get the same meal for 10 people for about a tenth of that in the East. It was just poverty.
I drove in 1987. I drove with, I think obviously not me personally, I was 5, but my parents and I drove from the UK to southwest Poland, which is where my mother's family lived, and we had to drive through East Germany, and I had a aunt who lived in West Germany and cousins and stuff like that, and so we stayed a night with them. It's obviously back then, it was the more advanced, richer than like Southeast England was, and then you literally crossed the border into East Germany, and I think we tried to stop, and there was nothing and no one to actually consume on our journey. It was quite. I still have a very vivid memory of the place we tried to stop at. It was like something out of the Wild West.
It was very stark. Yeah. Scary place, to be fair. And we'd just come from a real hip place, because Berlin was really on trend, and and still is to a degree. And you'd go to that place, and then, as I say, the duties there were, what you've got to remember about the army, and this leads to me in future life, is you train 365 days a year. You train to be a soldier, which is not that hard. So the training is complete and utter repetition. That's all you do. Every single day you train to go to war. That's it. And you do silly things like march up and down and clean your boots and stuff, but you train to go to war. Well, there's only so many ways you can strip a rifle down. So you just become exceptional at it. That's the honest truth. And it's just a total repetition. So the problem with the infantry is there's nowhere else to go. Effectively, you're just a soldier. There's no special skills particularly or anything like that. So I was lucky. I was really fit. Always entered everything I could at the time. I was a really good runner. I found out I was a really good runner. And every month you did a basic fitness test, which is you run 1.5 miles as a squad, and then you run 1.5 miles on your own, and it's in a certain time, and 600 guys to do it, and I'd be top 10, So I was recognised for being committed, for being good at all the drills and the skills that we needed. And after about 6 months in the battalion, a notice came up to come back and be part of a demonstration section, which was a 10-man team that went back to England to teach the adult recruits how to be soldiers. So you got this 17-and-a-half-year-old lad teaching 24-year-old grufties how to be a soldier, with 9 of my comrades, etc. But you'd walk into the cookhouse at night for your meal, and we'd walk to the front of the queue because we were staff, and we had an armband on. And as soon as they looked at me, and they were just about to all jump on me, and I just used to stick the armband out, and it was, okay, man, he's so cool. And we'd do that. And then as you rejoin your battalion, those guys that you've taught are there. So, and that's it. That is the British Army. We were posted, which I can't tell you about after kill you. And we lost some men. And my army career ended quite quickly, in that on one of our fitness tests, my right leg just gave way. I was always up there, and it is a real team thing. When you go on a combat fitness test, you carry 80 pounds of weight and your weapon and the slow lads in the squad. And you're only as fast as the slowest man. It's as simple as that to complete any team tasks. So my right leg just gave way. We didn't know why, but I was ambulanced off and a week in hospital with various tests, and we discovered I had something called Perthes disease in my right hip, which is a bone wasting disease. So apparently I'd always had it. And then I went through various tests and things, and I was offered that I could stay. And 6 years of my life I could stay, but it'd be a desk job. It's just not something that you do in the infantry, really. All the lads that do desk jobs, they dribble. It's what they do, and that's it. Sorry, but that's what they do. So I took the opportunity to leave and the end your contract, and I came out.
So you're on Civvy Street. How did you end up in a estate agency?
Well, my father-in-law at the time, or my future father-in-law, he helped me a great deal because I didn't have a car. I learned how to drive in the army, passed the test in the army. But I didn't have a car, so he'd take me to interviews and brief me. And all I wanted to do was sell something. That's all I knew. I remember going for an interview to sell Trebor sweets to corner shops. I always regret not getting that one. But it was an age thing with an experience thing. And just nobody had taken me on. And
so what age were you? So
I was.
So for context, what age were you when you left the army?
About 22, actually. Right. About 22.
So you'd had 6 years by this point in the army.
It was 5.5, so 21, 22. And it was just, I just wanted to sell. I don't know why, but the advice was I used to walk a lot. So I used to walk to the library. So if I was getting an interview at Avamore, I'd walk to the library. There was no computers as such in those days, and I would get the company book out and look up Avamore, so I could sit in the interview and say, I know how much you turned over last year. And so I'd really try. But one came up again. It was a estate agency. It was selling, and it was for a company called Johnson Kelly, independently owned firm. Went in and got the job. It later transpired that there was me and another guy, and they took two of us on for one job, and they were just going to see which one was best and get rid of the other, because you could do things like that in those days. Turned out he was a raging alcoholic and hardly ever came in. So I then got the job by default. And it was funny. And I had to buy a vehicle. So I bought a Volkswagen Passat, and it was lime green. And it had a black wing and a pink wing and a orange roof. It was just really bad. And on the first day, the manager said, come on, we'll do some real time sort of face-to-face action. He said, but we'll go in your car. And I was quite proud of it. And we walked out and he said, what's that? I said, that's my car. And he said, don't come back in it tomorrow. And I didn't. I went out and bought OBN 660R, a Honda Civic, that night with my father-in-law. And I came in that the next day. So, but yeah, progression. And it's quite interesting that we talk about this, and many wouldn't talk about this, because at the minute, and rightly so, and has been prevalent for a number of years, we talk about women in finance. I say that because, and I'm a great supporter, and we'll talk about it, that, anybody who's good at what they do in specialist finance should have the same opportunities as anybody else. Back then, I'd done 3 months in that job as an estate agent in a business with 7 other female colleagues. The manager got up and left one day, and then the area manager came over and sat us all in a room and said, well, Stephen's the only man, so he will now be the manager. And I'd been there about 33 seconds. But obviously, I was chuffed because I was manager. And that team were awarded many, many times for being the best. And those, downtrodden women were the most supportive group of people I've ever worked with. And my career went on from there. And, obviously some of the team followed on from that. Some have got different careers. And then in agency, you just get poached. And I only moved once. And then, so I started in 1987. I launched my own business in 96. So that interim period of 9 years, I worked for 2 agencies, corporates. They were independents when I started, and then bought out by the building societies, because the building societies had this great idea that only a certain proportion of homeowners were walking into the Nationwide or the Halifax or whatever it may be. And estate agents were the first port of call. So if we buy the estate agents, we've got the sales opportunity. So we employed a lot of mortgage brokers who didn't have a clue what they were doing. And we were just told that, you could buy a house, but you had to go and sit with Fred. And Fred would qualify you, sell you. And sadly, as it turned many years later, the building societies realised that it was a mistake and started selling them back for pounds and whatever. And an independent agent had opened in the town, and he asked me to go for lunch. And estate agents hate each other. There's no in between. There's no, there's not all that networking. We just can't stand each other. Pure competition. And he invited me for lunch. So it was like, why? Well, I just want to take you for lunch. Why? But anyway, I went for lunch, and he said, look, you're my biggest competition. Come work for me. I'll get rid of the competition. I'll pay you 3 times as much. I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do the other. And he was probably the best estate agent that I ever met. So, and, you know, I was still young. So I went to work for him, and it was an exceptional career. We dominated the town where we were, which was Bury in North Manchester. And then came the time. So I was offered a job. I was offered to leave, and it was a local developer. The Abbey National were prepared to sell 3 local estate agencies, 3 branches for £1 each, because there was so much debt and it wasn't working for them. And he wanted to buy them. So he said, I'm going to buy them and I want you to run it. Offered me an absolute fortune, luxury vehicles, all the rest of it. So I said, let me have a think about it. And then I can't remember why, but I was mooching about wherever I was in the normal day. And Graham, my boss, rang me and said, are you going? I said, what? I said, you going? You going working for Brendan? So, who? And it turned out that both wives were in Marks and Spencer's, and they started chatting. And so he said, have you made your mind up? And it was about 11 o'clock. And I said, no. He said, well, make it up by 5 o'clock or I'll make it up for you. One of my best ever lines. I thought, that's a great line, you know. And I went at 5 o'clock and we cried and we hugged and I fucked off for the money. And sadly, and it went really well, but sadly, I never got paid. And I stuck it out for about 2 or 3 months and just decided...
You didn't get paid once?
Didn't get paid once. And I left one day and put some super glue in the locks and didn't know what I wanted to do really, but sat at home for a couple of weeks and then decided, look, let's just go for it. Let's just open one. And there were no premises, you know, at all. There were no premises that we could open because the local authority the planners just wanted retail. There's too many offices and it was in a very officey clique and couldn't get one. And there was a first floor one available. Wow, you know. So I took it, you know, I needed to work. And even to this day, we talk about marketing, networking and all the rest of it. I'm not a very good marketer. People will disagree, but I'm not very good at cold calling, let's just say. So my plan was just to take the centre spread in the press on the day of the launch, which was Valentine's Day 96, in a first floor office with 3 flights of stairs. And the idea, and just hoping, like, you know, women with kids wouldn't want to buy a house really. They have to leave the kids at the ground floor and come and see us. But anyway, so I paid for a centre spread in the local press, and we launched on a Friday, and me and one member of staff that I brought with me, who was the best agent I've ever worked with. And me and her set the office up, did it on a budget. You know, we were still typing the sales particulars and taking photographs and sticking them on. And, well, we weren't on the first day because we didn't have any to sell. So basically, we put the ad in the paper and we sat there.
Wait for the phone to ring.
Yeah, literally.
How long did you have to wait?
About 10:05. Hello. Hello.
Nice.
Yeah, literally. Can you come and value the house? And from there, it just took off. And that's what, say you're not good at marketing, and that's what proves to anybody back then, before the days of the internet, if you have a good name and you're recognised as being good at what you do, and people see that name, they will speak to you. And that year we moved. We got some ground floor premises, which just happened to be opposite my old boss, which was quite good, and it was a big surprise. And we won the national title of Agent of the Year. And we came to London for a fancy do. And it was the only one. It was run by the National Association of Estate Agents, so the proper award ceremony. It was Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And we went down expecting to have a close run for the Northwest region. And it was announced, you know, they brought some goat's cheese starter or something in a hotel in Pall Mall. And I don't think I'd ever been to London. It was like, oh, it's so exciting. And then you had a break and you had your main course, and it was the regional winners, and we won the regional winners. Like, wow. And we'd done it, and we couldn't afford for the only other team member, Noreen, to come down. So she was sort of sat on the end of the phone and, you know, we won it, you know. And then I think I got a bit pissed then. the port and free wine. So I think I had a few too many drinks, and then you had your pudding, and the national title goes too. And I think I just got a gob full of chocolate fudge cake, and they read my name out because we had a really original name. The marketing person said, "Don't call it anything personal." So I called it Stephen Burns and Co. and they announced the name, and we won. And it was weird because we were getting phone calls. Can you stop at services from the press and do an interview? And it was all really new because we're just a simple northern lad. And that's how it went, and it went really successfully. We picked the award up. We were quite unique, and we charged twice as much as anybody else to sell the house, but we were 10 times better. And we were trying to be very much the Marks and Spencers, but we had the biggest market share of anybody. So we were the most expensive. We had the most houses for sale. We had a price range from literally houses in the day where you could buy a house for 10,000 then, right up to I sold Bury's first £1 million house. And I made the guy wait because I went to do the valuation, and it was a house in Holcombe Village, and he said, "What's it worth?" And I said, "It's probably worth about 950." And he was emigrating to Portugal, and I really tried to get in his will because he was really, really rich. But anyway, he, cut a long story short, he said, "When do you think I should put it on the market?" I said, "I think you should put it on the market when it's worth £1 million." So, when's that going to be? So I don't know, but I'll ring him. And that was it. We did it. We did the whole job. And about 6 months later, I said, "Right, come on, let's get it on for sale." So, and we put it on for £1 million and we sold it, And so little things like that happened along the way. And then the team just had to grow, really. And it grew to eventually in 2004, which was when it was sold, it grew to 34 staff, 4 branches. And yeah, we were selling an awful lot of houses, but we were volume with service and still maintaining a pretty strong fee.
And when you sold it, did you stay on in the business after that?
No, there was I think you know from a previous podcast that in 2004, a guy that used to work at one of the competitors, a guy called Rob Hallam, that today runs a media company, and he got out of agency, and he came to see me one day, and he said, "Don't know if you know, but I'm into media now. I work for Granada. I work for a production team." So he said, and they've asked us to do an estate agency fly on the wall, and they want to know who I think would be good at it. And he said, "I can't think of anybody weirder than you." So he said, "Well, what we've got to do is we've got to spend a day with you, set up a couple of decoy scenes, and they film it, and they call it rushes, apparently in the job. I don't know. And see if they do it. And then if you like it, they'll give us a budget, and then you do it. I don't get paid, but it's coverage." So we did those, and then Granada said to us, "Make it," and they lived with us. The production team lived with us for 6 months, filmed us in all walks of life, doing what we do. Obviously, I was the key component, and where I met my future business partner in Adapt Mark, and together with the film crew, it went out, and it was going out on a Tuesday night, but it was going out at 7:30 on ITV, which competed with EastEnders on BBC. So they said, if we get 1 million viewers for the 6 episodes, it's something that we'll probably do again. We got about 3 million for the first. And it was very tongue-in-cheek. If you watch it, it was very tongue-in-cheek. They just took the piss out of me for 6 months. They wanted the quirks, and they wanted the real me.
Was it kind of a bit Alan Partridge?
Very, very. Yeah. I am. Yeah. And, we literally, because they've got it on permanent, live film.
I'm ashamed that I haven't watched any of the episodes yet. I have to watch it now.
Yeah.
What was the series called?
It's called Viewing Recommended.
Viewing Recommended, right.
That's
going on. Well, I'll be watching it on YouTube on the train home now.
Sadly, you won't be able to, because when you put Viewing Recommended into Google, that was a term that every estate agent uses on every set of sales particulars that's ever been produced. You'll never find it. So on page 9642, you might get a link to a Spanish porno website. But no, seriously, I've got I've got 5 of the 6 episodes without adverts in. But it was just, even the music, we all sat down in my home every member of the team, and we sat to watch the first one with my big widescreen 12-inch telly and some nibbles, and as soon as the music came on, it was going to be corny. You just knew it was doodaloo, and you just knew it was going to be corny. But it was fun. It was our work day, and that's how it went. So that gained a lot of attention, good and bad. I think 2 days after it went out, I'll never forget picking up the phone, and there was a lady on the end. She said, "Can I speak to the manager, please?" And I said, "Can I help? Can I help?" She said, "That's Stephen Burns," she said. "That's Stephen Burns." She said, "I've just seen him in his Maserati drive out a B&Q car park and throw a cigarette butt out the window." I said, "Don't worry, I'll have a word with him." And that was how it went, So it was good and bad. It was good and bad. For me, it was good that I was offered and carried out several presenting roles and did a few Honey, I Ruined the House, and we came second at Car Boot Challenge and a few other things. So,
No Homes Under the Hammer?
No Homes Under the Hammer. I don't think it was about then. But, some of the co-stars are well known today. I said co-stars, was I a co-star? But it was good, but it was scripted. I worked with some great production teams, and, it's media sort of given me the start of my midlife crisis, really, because I turned up the first day and we had to be in Blackpool, which is about 60 miles from me. And we had to do a valuation on the house of an Elvis impersonator. Yeah, so all around this guy's house. So all weekend I was practicing, and because obviously I was the dummy of the two presenters. And cutting a long story short, they said, "What time would you like the car to be there?" So cut long story short, I've said that a lot. That's the title of my book, but we'll talk about that later. They send an S-Class to come and pick you up with water in the back and all the rest of it. And literally, they said, "Just come in your tracksuit." You get up there, they dress you, because they've got to remember when you wore that pink shirt when they do a take 2 weeks later. And they look after you. And then at lunchtime, they say, "What would you like from the sushi shop?" So I'm Googling sushi.
They did sushi in Blackpool in 2004.
Well, no, because I think probably. Yeah, fair point, really. Yeah, but anyway, they all came back with something really fancy, falafel and shit like that, and I had meat pie, peas and gravy, But it was a different life, and I think that life started the midlife crisis. I didn't dress myself. And they drop you off, pick you up, up and down to London, different. So that was a little bit weird. And during all this, we had somebody that wanted to buy the business, and I was developing property at the time as well. I was a refurber. Mark and I would buy, do up and sell. We didn't retain. We did many houses over 3 to 4 year period using bridging finance.
It was the really good. I mean, that early noughties period was. Yeah. It was a really good time for flipping, and
absolutely. And we had a great system in that the bridges back then. So just an example. So the two sides of estate agency are property and mortgages. It's as simple as that. And the same amount of money can be made on each side. Mortgages has very little cost. The estate agency has advertising, it has boards, it has lots of things that we pay for. We do not get paid until we sell a house. No sale, no fee was something Owen Oyston did before he used to fiddle with kids. Sorry if you have to cut that. And he invented no sale, no fee. So we literally worked for nothing, and the day before completion, the seller could say, "I don't want to move," which happened, and it cost us money. But the argument was, if you had 300 houses for sale, you got to put some in the paper. So you had to do it anyway. And so the mortgage side of the business, and we were very, very good at that. We were very good at the handover, because it was a sell. And it was a case of, some agents, and even to this day, disguise it as qualification. No, it wasn't. It was just, look, he's here, he's good, we've got a great team that do mortgages, let's have a look for you. You walk down to Halifax, you're going to get a Halifax product, you come with us, we'll give you the whole products on the market. And it was done as an appointed rep at various times of various insurance companies, went through Legal in General and different ones at the time.
This episode is brought to you by J3 Advisory. Recently, J3 Advisory assisted senior lenders in securing replacement structural warranties for 3 independent residential towers after the developer entered insolvency. Despite the challenges, J3 provided full reinstatement value coverage, supported by A-rated capacity, and issued the necessary structural warranty certificates. Do you need precise insurance advice for live and soon-to-be funded schemes? Get in touch with J3 Advisory. Learn more at j3advisory.co.uk. J3 Advisory is authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority.
We couldn't understand bridging finance, but there was a guy kept coming to see us from a bridging finance company called Davenham, who were a Manchester-based bridger. And he kept coming, and he'd come every couple of months and explain it to us. And he'd leave the office, and I'd look at Mark, who was a mortgage broker, and he knew the business. I'd look at him, he'd look at me, and we'd shrug our shoulders, and we'd forget, and we'd wait for the next time he came. And then eventually we got it. We got what he was telling us. We just couldn't get it. And in those days, it was 100% bridging.
So no money. You put no money in.
No money in. We just had to find legal fees, and we used to dodge paying the lawyer. We used to pay legal fees and valuation fees. And we actually doubled up a cracking deal by, we got a local contractor who was doing our early jobs. And basically, every refurb was 20 grand. Every refurb, it was 20 grand. We needed a new kitchen, 20 grand. We needed a rear extension, it was 20 grand. It was just 20 grand. And so we were paying this 20 grand. And then you run out of 20 grand. You know, your business, it cost a lot of money to run, you know. And it you know, was it profitable? Can't even remember. But anyway, cut a long story short, he then agreed that he would front all the work cost when we sell the house. He got a third. So basically, we still weren't putting any money in.
No.
He wasn't either, because he was on 90 days credit and we're selling a house in 3. So, you know, the cash flow was really, really good. We just did time and time and time again. And we met developers, and it was a developer that wanted to buy us. So we agreed to buy. The clause was that we were both to stay for a period of time. And I think after about day 4, he walked in and said, I think we should change the colour of the sailboards. And I left. And that was it. I looked back and Mark wasn't behind me, so I left, and that was in 2004.
So what happened next?
Well, I had a few quid, so I went through my midlife crisis then, basically. Within that year, I partied a bit. Still did the job because it was sort of what I did, but people would call me and I'd help them out and this, that and the other. I'd do valuations for people, put them in touch for mortgages, and just sort of fairly fanning about. And
you still flipping houses or not?
There was the final few that we had to do. So I was still physically busy. And my leaving of the agency was very much, I don't want to do it anymore. But I've then doubled that up with walking home and packing a bag and leaving. And I don't know why I did it. And I didn't actually tell anybody I was doing it, but I took the SIM card out on my driveway and left it and just drove up to the lakes and stayed there 3 days. So I was reported missing, and, you know, and then, cut a long story short, got a SIM card on the way back. I didn't know on the way back to where. And then the only number I could remember was Mark's, and it was, where have you been, and blah, blah, blah. And that's it. I never returned home. And that was the depth of the midlife crisis.
Wow. So your first relationship, your first marriage, you just up sticks and left.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, that's probably worth a podcast in its own. But like, what if you looking back now? What do you think sparked it? Why did you? What?
Don't know.
Or do you still? Or you still can't? It was just a feeling.
It was just something at the time. I built it up. I lived in a £2 million, 12,000 square foot house. I was a lad from a council estate. It all happened very, very quickly. The telly thing. My life was work. And listen, I'm not good at statements, and I've changed since, but I felt then that you can only love one thing, and I loved work. So everything else, family, everything else just didn't get a look in. I left at 7. I got in at 9. and I did it 7 days a week,
religiously.
And I just wanted to be the best, and we were, we recognised as the best. We had great fun, we had the best team in the world. The worst time for me with recruiting the team was when you couldn't poach the best. You'd run out, you got everybody in the town that was any good at the job, so you had to interview, and then you get people in who come and just tell you lies, don't they? Make things up on the CV and tell you lies. And they say, yeah, we're on 28 grand a year. So I'd ring the boss and say, she's been for an interview. How much is she on? I said, 21. Oh, she said, I'm going to sack her tomorrow. Why? Because she just told me she's come. Oh, so shit, shouldn't have lied. But what I'm saying, we built up, we couldn't make it any bigger, but I'm not very good at scale, which will be something that we talk about as probably as my future goes on. So yeah, it was just, did I have a midlife crisis? I was, 2004, born in 66. I can't do sums really. But I was 30 odd. And yeah, that was the last time. I lived in the same town for 6 months, realised that I wasn't any longer the personality that I was. And, I wouldn't walk in and get the same table in the restaurant. It's true. And through all this, and the turmoil that it caused, probably about 6 months thereafter, I met a girl, and we've been married for 20 years. And she was from a different town, so I moved to Liverpool 6 months later, and we're here 20 years later.
Yeah, a mank in Liverpool is behind enemy lines.
yeah. You learn really.
It's a brave. It would have been a brave decision in the beginning.
It was. I think I'll never forget that. One night, very early doors, living on one of the roughest council estates in Liverpool, known as Council Farm, now called Stockbridge Village. And she said,
"That's a good rebrand, isn't it?"
Yeah, very good, very good. But let me tell you, it's still quite a scary place to live. And I drove on with an X5. I had an X5 at the time, and I used to get stopped 3 times a night because I had to be a drug dealer.
Well, X5, an X5 in Liverpool, or that part of Liverpool. Yeah, it does scream.
It does. It does
scream class A.
It does, and it does, and it's crazy. And Susan she had a migraine, and she said, "Can we have a chippy tea?" So yeah, of course we can. So I walked round to the chippy, which was literally a short walk, and I said, "Can I have whatever we had?" And the guy behind me just tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Fuck are you doing in here?" I said, "What?" He said, "What have you got on?" And I looked down, and I had a Barthez, who was Man United's goalkeeper at the time, had his top on. But I didn't click because it was black. It was black with just a white badge and Barthez across the back. So anyway, I taught my way to that one. Sausage, chips, curry, and probably peas, I think, at the time. Took it home and yeah, got away. But you do realise the culture is different. But I've lived there 20 years now. Don't live in the same place. Live in a little bit more of a mellow location.
But you were saying, on last week, which was Halloween, you were saying that it gets a bit fruity, even in the more salubrious part of Liverpool that you live in now.
It's traditions, and they have something called Mizzy Night, which is short for Mischief Night, which is the night before Halloween. And bus services stop at 4 p.m. because bus drivers get kidnapped and things.
No.
I mean, oh, absolutely. Cars get turned over. If you look at some photographs on my phone, you're all out eating a roast dinner and you see the cars getting turned over in the car park. So, it is basically people run wild. It's the kids, but the older teenage kids, and you see what it's
scallies,
like
basically.
Yeah. And they literally terrorise the city for a night. And you tend to just batten down the hatches. And if somebody knocks on your door for trick or treat, you give them a trick because you don't want the treat.
No.
But yeah, it's a scary night. But now they've got dispersal orders and big police presence out and everything else in a lot of the hotspots. So yeah, it's a little bit. It's more cutting edge, but Liverpool's a lot smaller than Manchester. So Liverpool city centre has an outer ring. I always describe any city. You have a city centre, you have an outer ring, and then you have the burbs, the suburbs. And the outer ring in Manchester is the same. We hear about Moss Side and places like that. And in Liverpool, you have that, but it's closer. So it's all much tighter. So it tends to bleed out easier. It's not ring fenced in there. So even the people that live in the so-called really posh spots are going to get a little bit of the rough and ready.
And that's why the Liverpool players, when they go on Champions League nights, their wives are they get visits from the local.
Yeah, no, it's true. And again, you're talking Crosby and things, and Crosby by the sea. Well, it's by the Mersey, let's be honest. But it's a bit further out and a bit more affluent. But the good thing about any city is it's good to live close to it to get the benefits from it.
Yeah.
When as time goes on, I lived in the West End for quite some time. There's nothing better. But from a then point of view in the early 2000s, Liverpool was a really interesting place to go. And I had a number of Manchester United clients. And because it was my new home, I thought it'd be a great idea for them to invest in the city. And I'll never remember Gary Neville picking me up one day in his Bentley. And we drove to Beetham Tower. Stephen Beetham was, it was the tallest tower in Liverpool. And we drove into the underground car park. We were met by him and his executive assistant. We went up in the lift straight into the penthouse because we were going to buy both penthouses as an investment. And as the penthouse door opened, we all walked in. So the building owner, his PA, myself and the buyer, and the plasterer, literally within 3 steps, just turned around, stood up and said, "What the fuck are you doing in my city?" And from that point, I thought, probably won't buy this. And we left and we never returned.
No.
Yeah, absolutely true. And that's, it is the footballing rivalry it's gone off a little bit now. It's a little bit more relaxed at the end of the day.
Wait, is that because Man United aren't as good? Is that a contributory factor?
Yeah, it's very much more City and United now, but there'll always be that rivalry. And, you've seen people come on as the person that we mentioned, pundits, and, respected for being good footballers at the time. But there is the hatred of football is the only hatred. I'm a big, fat, red-haired, old, tattooed mank. I'm not really a mank, I'm a woolly back, as they call it. And I've not had 1 second of trouble in 20 years of going anywhere in that city, all times of night. So it's a very, very, very welcoming city.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, I've spent a reasonable amount of time there, so I know a little bit about it. Yeah. So they're people with sort of hearts of gold. Yeah. Despite the reputation that sometimes I think goes with them. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, there were riots in Rochdale back in the day. Just because there were riots in Toxteth, but when you're seeing events that happen all around, sadly, it's just one of those cities that gets it. And as I say, there's as much in Manchester as Liverpool. But as I say, I'm, my roots, I'm not a Manchester lad. I'm from Rochdale, who spent his sort of career life in Bury. But I'd never go back. I love Liverpool, the city, the people. And, yeah.
So you've moved to Liverpool. You sold your estate agency business. What was the next move?
So the next move was fanning about for a bit, really, enjoying some of the splendour, having a bit of time off, new relationship, new family. I mean, I was a really shit dad. My children all grown up now. I had a boy and girl that I loved dearly, but I worked and I went to work for them to have PlayStations and dolls, and I thought that's what being a good dad was. Things that I never had. They had a good home. They had tuitions of what they wanted to do, etc., etc. And I was never very good. So I got a second opportunity to do that with stepchildren. And that alone, creates its problems because you've got the children that have been left behind and the children that are there now. And it took some years to get through that. And we're all exceptionally close as a group of people now. But yeah, I lost a lot of my early family years being obsessed with work, and you can't get that back. You can't get that back. And that's why we may talk about the wokeness of the modern world, but, people working from home and people adapting the works to suit the families and stuff. And I've got plenty to say on that point, good and bad.
Going fast forward, when we had the financial crisis, 2008, Northern Rock. What were you doing at that time? Like, what was, and then, what did that period, I guess, for the 08 to sort of 11 and beyond, what did that look like? And, what was keeping you out of trouble or in trouble?
So I decided, just before the sort of estate agency sale, really, the early 2000s, there was this thing called the internet came along. And as much as I wanted to fight it, it was this amazing thing, so we were literally going manual to online. And I launched a company from my back bedroom. I smoked 80 cigarettes a day at that point, from my back bedroom, smoking every 80 of those cigarettes every day. And it was a website, and it was called Suburban Investor. So basically it was an estate agency, but I was selling investment properties for investors. And it just really took off, and that's what made me fall in love with the internet. So right up until that financial crisis-ish, up until 2009, even into 10, I was probably completing 80 properties a month for a fixed fee, like an estate agent does. A lot of Northern Irish investors at the time were investing in Liverpool, in Manchester. All my own clients that, Stephen, I've got a 2-bed terrace rented at $450 a month. I want 35 grand for it. And I'd sell it, I'd charge £1,000, and it was going really, really well. The crash came, and obviously that stopped. And again, I can't work for anybody, you need to, you've got a new life, you're still paying for your old life. So the expenses are still there. So it's just making ends meet. I always like to have a company. I'll use the term we a lot in this discussion, because I work for myself, but never enjoy working on my own. It's we. The team at the agency was we. And people would question, the clients would say, why are you saying we when it's you? Because everybody's got a part to play. So I'm not employable. I'm way, way, way too beyond.
That makes two of us.
The mental state. So I'll never be employable. So it was then it was helping clients through that period, who were getting into problems with repossession proceedings, with all sorts of receivers coming in, etc., helping them out financially. I was still in touch with Mark, who was he'd gone on to open a bridging company with the guy that bought the estate agency. So I was passing bridges and to and fro. So it was doing it, but it was doing it with the family at my side. So I was managing to sort of do it part-time, still earn enough, but enjoy a little bit of life at the same time. And that was all right. And that was probably the end of the fame. I think it was 2014. Mark had, he had the same sort of journey, on the basis that his journey was estate agency, eventually was sold on. It failed, obviously. I'd left, so it was obviously going to do. And he, with the high net worth individual, opened a bridging company. That, come GFC, obviously, same sort of setup.
If you're doing 100% funding,
No, they weren't, to be fair. They weren't. So he opened, it was a totally private firm, probably with 6 million quid plus back with Bank of Ireland and whoever so it was probably 20 million quid book. And he managed that with some of the old team that we had, some of his old brokers, and enjoyed that up until the 2009, 2010. And he did a bit what I did, sort of float around, did the odd mortgage, I did the odd property sale, and totally separately. And we sort of never found our feet. And then he wanted...
So everything was kind of a bit unstructured and,
absolutely.
A bit of this, bit of that, but,
we were just...
Formal.
Yeah. And then he was putting his kids through school. I was, sort of trying to have a good family time. And then he decided to... he wanted to be a bridging broker instead of just doing the odd mortgage, which he did, etc. So he started McBridge. It was a very original name.
Yeah.
And he started McBridge, and then he got a little bit busy. He was lending the money of one bridging company in the north, who's still active today. So I think he probably did about 18 million in his first year, and it was all through one lender. He was too busy for himself, because he'll admit he's naturally a little bit lazy. And his son was in a estate agency, and he pulled Jordan on board to help him. And, you know, that was the early days. And then he called me and said, look, I'm going on holiday. Jordan's, you know, going to be on his own, possibly not ready, but, you know, needs some extra help. We do us a favour, will you cover for a couple of weeks? And I said, no. And he said, all right. And he rang me back. He said, do you fancy having another go at it? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I've started this bridging and it's quite good fun. And my problem was we had such good memories from the agency, such good fun, such joy, you know, the whole telly thing, everything. I just didn't think you could ever repeat it. So I just, no, for a bit. And then, the holiday then came later and he said, look, I know you don't want to do it full time, but I really need you to help me out and do some cover. I said, all right, I'll do it. How much? He went, oh, I didn't think I'd have to pay you. How much? And, you know, it was like, well, I'll give you 500 quid. I said, no. I said, not $2,000 a week. He went, no. Anyway, we ended up $1,000 a week. So he said, so I'll see you Monday. I said, no, I'll send it now. Here's my bank details. And anyway, and I went in to carry out some holiday cover for his business. And then I never left. That was that.
Yeah.
So, obviously it had to be rebranded because it was stupid. And that's where I sort of fit in, is that I feel that I'm quite good at building a brand, building a company. I'm not good at running a company. I'm not good at company things, but I'm quite good at instilling a system and procedures that we carry on through. So we got our systems in place, and we just ticked on. From that point, we were doing things in the north. That relationship broke down with the one lender because I didn't like that relationship, and you can't just lend one lender's products. And then just out of the blue, we got a call from an old client of mine, and his nephew had put his hand up in an auction, bought something in Tottenham. And I had to Google it, and it was somewhere in London. So I have this obsession with seeing anything that we're going to lend on. So basically all three of us got on the train app, and it was like, I think we had about 600 quid in the bank, and it was about 400 quid to go there and back. So anyway, we did, and we stood outside this house. Not me, I wasn't allowed, but we'll talk about that in a sec. So those two went to London and stood outside, and in Bolton that would have been 30,000, and it was like 300. And you know, he put 10% down, and it was the days of probably 65% bridging, and we arranged a loan. And from that point on, it was a member of the Orthodox Jewish community. He sung our praises, and from that point on, we probably did £1 billion in the next 5 years in that community. And
you want to explain to people why? I know some people would have watched or listened to the episode with Jordan where we might have touched on it, but it'd be great to hear from your point of view as to why they didn't want you to come down to do that client meeting, and what the fear was. And basically there was a lender, there was a non-religious Jewish lender that said, you can never take Steve to the Orthodox community because he's got tattoos. And back in when times weren't as good, the concentration camps, prisoners were tattooed. And, you know, a pink square meant you were a doctor, or an orange triangle, and they don't like it. So the guys kept going to London. I was like, hello, shall I come? No, too busy, got that completion in Bolton. And that went on for a couple of months. And then one of the clients just said, we want to meet Stephen. And we had an honest conversation about why I couldn't. So we asked this client, so the reason Stephen hasn't come down is because he's got tattoos, and we've been told. And he said, no, David Beckham, you know, we get down. And that's it then. And obviously, I get conscious about them for certain parts of my life. And we went down, and that
that amount of business that we did there just meant that we had to be there. We were doing valuations from the south coast all the way up to, well, not North London, not much further, up to sort of Watfordy way. And we were just down and down and down and down and down. So we took a flat in the West End in Soho, and operated there for about 3 years, getting home, seeing family at weekends, but trying to spend the majority of the week in London. And it was a fabulous, fabulous part of the journey.
Yeah.
What London allowed us to do, with the use, that sounds really awful, with MediaNet and Karen and Beth bringing us on board, introducing us to lenders, and we were just in awe of the attitude, the willingness to lend. And the problem with the North is that together we're such a force.
Yeah.
Such a force. And whenever we come and get some terms from Avamore or any other bridging lender, they would beat those terms to retain the business. And it was tough. In my pre-word on the street days, I've probably not lent £1 million in 2 billion. And it was because I was trying to be a little bit different. And to be different, we were bringing the London brokerages, the London lenders, up to and make products available in the North. But that still can be tough today.
It is. I think particularly in development. Yeah.
Yeah. I spoke to a lender today. I've got a little deal in South Wales. Ooh, what? There's quite the South Coast, because their infrastructure network, because a London lender, his QS who he meets in the coal and shovel in, Pall Mall or wherever he meets him, he's not going to travel up to Burnley to do a drawdown inspection. So it's all about infrastructure for me. And we've seen many lenders try to open a Northern branch. We've seen them actually physically open them, and then we've seen them have Northern BDMs, and the support they get is that big. Do they ever visit them? Does the principal ever come up? Do you see it? And we've seen big firms do this, and all go back again. And we've seen now a couple of the smaller firms that are having a really good go and trying it. But it's a minimum 2-year stretch to let a Northern BDM generate business. I mean, there's BDMs in London that will take over. Sorry, I'm having a slag the BDM session. There's BDMs in London that will take over the job of another BDM and just live on the back of the previous BDM for 5 years on his 85 grand a year plus bonuses. Up north, it takes some working to get Northern brokers to lend off a relatively new company. And it's all about the support of the principals of that firm. But, I think there's massive space for some of the London lenders to operate in the North. I just think they've got to have a Northern brain behind it.
Well, definitely useful words of wisdom on that front, and certainly maybe I'll pick your brain on that at a different time. It would be remiss of me not to ask the question that you were very highly regarded within Adapt. You had obviously had that very strong bond with Mark, which went back decades. The question I think a lot of people will be dying for me to ask you is about your exit from Adapt or AFIG or AFIG, if I want to put myself in mortal danger. You built a successful business. You had a long-standing partnership with Mark. Why did you decide to leave? What was the spark?
I don't think I left Adapt. COVID was something that, from 2014 up to 2018-19, Adapt were very much, on everybody's lips. We were a very active broker. And then in came good old COVID. And sadly, what that did is force us out of an office, and we went from a literally living with a very close family team, living with each other during working hours, so to speak, even, with the flat in the West End, etc., to working from home, and it separated us, and really that didn't fit the model. That model as a business probably wasn't right, 4 lads and a girl, all that have known each other for a long, long time, having great fun, running a very professional business. But, you know, we were a cracking brokerage. Was it a good business? Who knows? That's for accountants to decide. So really from COVID, the business changed and the relationships between us changed, because we weren't that team that were doing what we'd done for so long so well. You know, I put on 3 stone, you know, sat at home eating and lost 2.5. So I'm nearly getting there. And then Mark had a great idea to reinvigorate that. You know, he's an ideas man, and the reinvigoration involved joining forces with another company. And it probably just wasn't for me, not for any negative reasons. I just think that back to, as I mentioned earlier, joining Adapt was something that I wasn't sure if I wanted to relive, because Mark and I had a great time in agency. Then we relived it again. There was sort of that gap, that COVID gap that was extended. And I probably wasn't sure. However, put me all into it with the rebrand. We all had fancy titles from CEO, COO, whatever. And, you know, it operates today. You know, the guys are running a successful business as far as I'm aware in the broker community. Slightly different from what Adapt was, and maybe it needed that change. Maybe it needed to modernise, and maybe the model of Adapt wasn't right and now it is right, or vice versa. Or only time will tell. But it was never for me. And I tried to leave. I tried talking to people about my issues from day one, really. And sadly, we couldn't come to a compromise that suited me. So I left. Typically unorthodox as I am, my announcement was on LinkedIn one morning, to the surprise of the others. And that was that really. It locked it out immediately. And I just took a break. Didn't know what I wanted to do, but I felt relief immediately from that point in time that I'd made the right decision for me. And then I took some time, and you know, the great thing about this industry and, you know, the social media is you tell people. So some great corporate offers. There was great support for one, just to, you know, for people that I'd never met, to make sure I was okay. As in the people I'd worked with the last 30 years, not really caring too much. So it was great. And, you know, I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't shy. I could, you know, crack on. Clients would call, etc., etc. And, you know, there was certainly no Michael Street in the future for me at that point in time. Michael was somebody that I'd met. He was an annoying little pain in the ass. He worked for a lender, and he very tenacious. He harassed me to give him a case, which I did, and he impressed me. And he was really, really good. So he got another and another and another, and we collaborated on a couple of things. And then he just texts me, WhatsApp, whatever he does. He's all into TikTok and all this modern stuff, just to see if I was okay. And it was like, you know, everybody was offering jobs and flats in Marylebone and hundreds of thousands of pounds a year and all the rest of it. And he just wanted to know how I was. It's fucking odd, you know? And we started just having a couple of meetups, having some coffees. It was really interesting, his journey, but he was always focused on how I was. You know, he didn't ask me what I was going to do. And I'd chat to him about a couple of the offers and stuff like that, but that was never the focus. You know, the focus, I mean, it was like, you know, it's from Gorton, so our meetings were never posh. You know, we used to share a bacon sarnie. He had red sauce, I had brown, no butter on my side. But he was there as a friend, you know, at a time that, you know, I'm a really strong man in the face. But, you know, I have feelings, and, you know, I'd walked out of something that I felt I was a great part of creating. And there was some sadness to it, you know. There's a lot of sadness to it, not just some. And I was in a limbo of what I wanted to do, you know. Was I going to leave specialist lending altogether? You know, property, should I give it up? Should I move to Spain? I don't know. And as the more I got to meet Michael, the more I wanted more of him. And he just started throwing into the ring his plans for Word on the Street. And I thought, I wonder if I can be part of that. And maybe, in simple terms, I've got clients, they need servicing. If I just chuck the work through you and, you use your methodology of getting it through and we complete and we split fees and stuff. But I wanted more. He never pushed it at all. So I just felt I wanted more. And I saw this journey of this 30-year-old couple, because it's him and his soon-to-be wife, Jasmine, that it's on camera now. And I wanted more of that. And I felt that, I've talked to you before about how I feel I can build a brand. Mate, he's built a brand, It's called Street, Word on the Street. I mean, it's something that, it matches with him, but it doesn't have to match with him, etc., etc. But he's built a brand, so I can't do that. But I felt I could bring something to help that company, not that individual or those people, but bring something to that company to elevate them in the specialist market world and do it again, basically, but do it in a sustainable way. And I don't think that's what we had at Adapt. I don't think Adapt was ever a sustainable business. It wasn't sustainable because we never let people in. We'd interview people and hate them.
They weren't in the cool gang, but couldn't get in the cool gang, basically.
No, it's a really tight knit, really, really tight knit.
And by the way, I totally understandable. And it, ultimately, if you want to grow a business, you do have to be, you need to add new people, new faces, and you need to be open to that. That's that is the reality of it. So,
but it's not something potentially that I can actually agree with sat here today. I'm 6 or so months in with Michael and Jasmine. We've grown the team. The first addition to that team was somebody I've worked with for 10 years that was with me at Adapt. So probably a bit of a fail safe. But
was that Danielle?
Yeah. And it was ready, from never doing specialist lending to being a absolute red hot case manager, obviously all under my guise, getting better. She's come to a company, she's having one-to-ones every month. She's being trained. She's enrolling on courses. I mean, the company it's more, although it's a bit more corporate, it provides structure, training, things that, with that, not a criticism, but, that, some companies have that within their culture and some companies don't. Yeah. And that's just how it is. And very, AFIG may very well now be that company. Maybe the old hats held that back, so I'm not reflecting on what they're going on to create, but what Michael and Jasmine have created at Word on the Street is a sustainable business that can grow and can scale. I'm a terrible businessman. I moved out of a 12,000 square foot house into a 3-bed flat that smelt a little bit of piss. And I'm not a good businessman. I'm a really good broker. But Michael and Jasmine add the business elements to it. And, a little bits from the background of working in, they were both together, brilliant corporate training ground. And then the background in lending. And I'd urge anybody watching this that ex-lender staff make fabulous brokers. Brokers, good lenders? I wouldn't think so, but fabulous brokers. Yeah. Because they have the great technical knowledge of fighting with you guys. But sorry, I'm going to be told off. We don't argue. I once had the nickname of the angriest man in bridging. What a twat. Yeah. But I was passionate and people knew that the anger was perhaps just expressed in the wrong way. It's passion to get a deal through.
No, you're fighting for your client, and you're putting their best interests at heart. And at the end of the day, we as lenders we have to recognise that. We do, but it's 2024. So what we do now is we challenge. So we don't argue, we challenge. We provide the information that allows the lender's team to reverse or make the right decision. And it works. I can promise you, it absolutely works. Present it well. Warts and all, but present it well. And if an underwriter wants to know on a self-funded buy-to-let and wants to see the last 3 years' personal tax return, we can ask why. We can ask why. What's it actually got to do with the deal? So all I'm saying is that a lender is a great training ground for a broker, especially on the technical side. As you said, you've been with Word on the Street 6 months. what do you see the future, A, for Word on the Street, and B, for yourself more generally? Like, you're what, late 50s now, you've got a few more good years in you for sure. But you're also enjoying playing a lot of golf as well, I see, especially from your Instagram. Are you one of those golfers, all the gear, no idea, or
absolutely
are you starting to get quite good at it?
Absolutely shit. I play less golf than is portrayed on social media. My aim was to get Michael really into it, but Jasmine won't let him. But no, in fairness, this is still my personal problem. Is I love to work, so I don't like playing golf on a Tuesday afternoon. I can't do it because my phone is there. So it still tends to be very much at the weekends or on corporate days. Michael and I, we work really well together. What I want to do is be the best broker I can for as many years as I feel I can to enhance his and Jasmine's business, because it is his and Jasmine's business. I want to enhance it, and I want them to go forward with the plans. I will comply with those plans. They will allow the quirkiness of Stephen Burns into their business, which they have done with open arms. He teaches me new things every day in respect of how to grow and sustain a good specialist finance brokerage. We're also very much wider on our products offering, because Michael does a heck of a lot of term buy-to-let, and on the specialist side, I sit very much Bridgie, which obviously he's good at as well, and the dev. And, I just want to see them go to great things with no end date, really. I just know when it's time for me. Physically, they take care of me. They know when I look tired. They'll tell me to go home, to take some time off. He'll look after me. We'll know when the time's right. And that's all I can say. And I'm just going to watch them I'm not going to be on a beach in Bahamas, because I pissed it up against the wall buying a new set of golf clubs every week. But it'd be nice to see them grow and hopefully for them to enjoy the spoils at a much younger age. 58 and no plans to retire. I'd like to see them to at 38. And they're not going to retire as in, they're going to maybe move on. Businesses can be sold, but the businesses that I've created in the past sort of can't be, because it's all me. And that was very much prevalent in the agency. It was very much prevalent in Adapt, and Word on the Street is building a business. They're good business people. Yeah, they're good business people. Well,
I've certainly extended an invitation to Michael. We'll do this again with him, and maybe in a few months' time, and we can really talk in more detail about Michael's vision for the business. So I'll very much look forward to that. We were going to touch on work-life balance, as you described it, the woke working practices, and we're a little bit limited for time today. We can't maybe go in as in depth as we want to in the some of the anecdotes, but where and it's really relevant for me, because this week, as we'd mentioned, Phil Gould was leaving the business in the end of at the beginning of the spring, and so we're looking to interview people to replace him. And one of the things, one of the personal qualities that I'm really looking for is someone who's going to be a real animal. And I met someone who was really good, technically very proficient, but, he gets to work from home on a Wednesday because he's got 3 young kids and he wants to spend, and I think that he doesn't want to give that up. And I wouldn't begrudge someone that. And I'm really glad I know that after the first round of interviews. But at the end of the day, that's not someone I want running my business, where do you stand on, where you seem to maybe be about to launch into earlier some strong views on, on business practices. So where do you stand on that sort of work-life balance thing?
It's quite interesting that Michael and I have a code, and when he wants me to stop speaking, he removes his glasses, and they're fully off now. They're absolutely
they're absolutely on, I might add.
So I think that I was a shit dad, and I totally respect anybody that wants to spend time with the kids. However, kids do go to school. And they go to school roughly the same time as we go to work. So I do think there's a bit of mid-ground on it. You know, the easiest way, we talk anecdotes. I can say that, I want to say, yeah. But the simple one I can say is Danielle drops her 2 children off, one at school and one in care, just from an age point of view. And she sort of starts at 10. You know, you have to have a contract of employment. 10 till about 5. You know, we eat lunch at our desk and we do what we do. If she's in traffic at 9:45 and she's not going to get there till 15:15, all I want is for her not to have to ring. Just don't worry about it. Just know that nobody's looking at the clock at 10 o'clock. Yeah. Don't put yourself in danger, you know, racing to get to work, you know, just work it as best as you can. And the time we spend in the office, we're good. You know, we work really, really hard. Am I a believer that office time is important? Absolutely. I think that in 6 months, I've learned an awful lot from an individual. And that individual just happens to be Streety because he's got things to teach. We don't sit down and have sessions. You just learn things from people, whether that's the way he goes about it, whether that's, you know, and I'd like to think that I teach him a bit on the other side. Some technical, some just life skills, you know, but I think there's ways of making work balance work. But I don't think it's remote working in any shape or form. I think to better yourself, you've got to be around people, and you've got to be around people that you can learn from, build trust with, and you know, I glasses are going to come off in a minute, but when I sold the agency and I looked from the outside, I realised that a lot of the team was stealing from me. Not money, didn't carry cash, time.
Yeah.
Stationery. Does it matter? And I thought they were all wonderful. You know, I thought they were all wonderful at the time. But I think I was probably a bit of a pain because on payday, I wouldn't do bank transfer. I made them come in while I sat with a checkbook and tell me why they deserved to get it that month. So I think I was a bit of a wanker. You know? But no, so I think it's very difficult because you didn't mention the role of Phil Gould. So it's head of credit, essentially. And it's a critical role within your business. You're not interviewing for somebody that might lose a bit of paper.
It's a leadership role. You know, you're leading people, and it's not just about, you know, it's not just, you can't just say, it's not like a BDM where it's like, I don't care what hours you're doing as long as the output's right. You need, you know, you actually, the face time is important.
But you know what I must interrupt here and say is that we have a variety of lenders. I love our lenders. We have a massive panel within reason. And, you know, we look at, I always talk about the BDMs, I support BDMs. And the problem that you have is that what is it? The amount of terms you get out the door, is the amount of visits that you carry out, how busy your diary is, et cetera, et cetera. It's what is your barometer of success as a BDM. For me, it's what goes out the door. You know, how much money you're lending. If you're lending 10 million quid a month, whatever that may be. But is it how many Instagram posts, how many, and there are BDMs that are targeted on all sorts of things. And, you know, one of the old stories I say is I remember some of the packages, you know, telling us, you know, we get 100 leads in and we convert 6 of them. Wow. If I get 100 leads in, I expect to convert about 98, you know? So it's difficult, and it's the barometers of success. I think there's certain names in the industry that cause surprise when a leave is announced, and Phil Gould's one. But, you know, we know Phil's got a young family. We know he's from Sheffield, and London isn't for everybody, Michael, sadly. I absolutely loved my 3 years in London, but no, if anybody wants to work from home, I would recommend that they lick envelopes for them companies out in Taiwan and earn £1 an hour.
Right. So, Steve, we're starting to wind down now, and you know, Michael Street's taking his glasses off because he knows what's coming. The question I regularly ask the guests that come onto the podcast is, you know, what would you tell your younger self, knowing what you know now? I'm you know, if I was going to pick an age that you might advise yourself at, the most natural one would be, you know, on your 16th birthday when you're about to join the army. Like, you know, if you knew what you know now, then what would you tell yourself?
It's probably to go and sell drugs.
We're keeping that.
Okay. It's a real difficult one because the army is a real proud part of my life, but it's made me the obsessive individual that I am, which sometimes gives you sleepless nights, you know. This morning I set off to Michael's house to get the train, and I got 8 miles in and drove back to see if I locked the door. So that lives with me all these years later. I would study as hard as I could. I don't think I'd enter further education, if I'm honest. I'd start to earn as early as I could. I'd push a family off till mid-20s until you've got something behind you, so you're not both having to go to work to pay for nursery fees and all the rest of it. I would go for the best well-paid position, and I'd just spend the first 5 or 10 years just gathering the skills to do it yourself, and, you know, drain the companies you work for the information and for the experience, and then just go and do it yourself.
Well, that's brilliant. Well, Steve, it's been as it always is, been an absolute pleasure. I hope it's been a good experience for you as well, and it's been great to have Michael Street in the studio with us as well. If people want to find you on the internet, where can they find you, and what's the best way to get in touch?
I'm lucky to have joined a fantastic business this last 6 months, and the one disadvantage is it has the longest domain address in the history of broking. Word on the street, see, I can't even say it. wordonthestreetgroup.co.uk. I'm Stephen at with a PH. Obviously, Instagram, it's private, it's my life. Keep your nose out, so don't bother there. But obviously, the company has TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. God, we're good. And LinkedIn, obviously, just look for me on LinkedIn. I'm the handsome ginger fellow. But yeah, you'll see me around. I'm always around at professional events, and it'd be good to see anybody. What I will say, and we've not talked about it, but brokers, everybody thinks it's competitive. It's not. I talked earlier about estate agents. We hate each other. Brokers, I don't think I've competed against a broker on a deal in a decade more than twice. And obviously I won those 2 times. If you think there's something that you're not the best at, ask. You know, I'm always at the end of a phone. If you want to talk about a case, you want to talk about a deal, it's not about commission splits. It's on about helping you get a deal through. Vice versa. I'll ring you, so feel free to ring me. Let's collaborate, and let's build a community.
Well, we love a bit of collaboration, especially amongst the broker community. So we're all here for that. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I've been really looking forward to having Stephen on, so I hope it was worth the wait. It certainly was for me. If you want to get hold of me, you want to reach out to me, you find me on the internet. I'm at property_funder. This has been the Property Funder podcast. I think we're going to be looking at maybe a bit of a rebrand at some point in the future. So we'll be talking to Versta and our editing team shortly about that. But in the meantime, thank you all for watching. Just one or two final bits of admin. First of all, we'd like to thank Avamore Capital for being our sponsor. Avamore Capital is a bridging and development lender based in London, and you can get hold of them at www.avamorecapital.com. And also want to thank our other sponsor today, which is J3. We're going to have a nice J3 jingle if you haven't already heard it, but J3 are a provider predominantly of new build warranties insurance, or latent defects insurance, so go check them out as well. Anyway, like I said, I've been Michael Dean. Thank you very much. Thanks Stephen, thanks Michael, and maybe we'll see Michael soon, and we'll talk to you all again in the very near future. Cheers.